This is the Level Up Podcast. I'm Taylor Petrinovich.
And I'm Kelley Gilster of 618 Studios.
And we are on a mission to help filmmakers level up their businesses and their craft so they can make more and work less.
We want to help you confidently take your business from mainstream to luxury, and it all starts right here. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this week's conversation. It's just me, Kelley, this week. Taylor, unfortunately, is out sick with no voice. So it's going to be me and Manda today. Manda is an incredible wedding planner with May & Co. Creative and an amazing educator, which is actually how I first discovered her through May & Co. Monthly. So thank you so much for coming on this week, Manda.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Like I said, I think, I'm scrolling Instagram and one of your reels came up and you were just speaking so much truth as you always do, I feel like. And as a creative partner who's been in the industry for 13 years, it's very easy for me to pinpoint the wedding planner who's giving TikTok per se advice, I can tell who's been in the industry for 2 years versus like a true expert in their craft. So it was really easy to see that you knew what you were talking about.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely have a different approach, I think, probably to education in the wedding industry, but I feel like there's not a lot of transparency out there, and there's not a lot. I think there's a really clean way of being able to educate people without being mean or talking anyone else down or talking about our clients or, I really wanted in my education to be able to create a space that was relatable and helpful and left people feeling, positive and not crappy about themselves or someone else. So I'm happy that you found me that way. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then I, kind of did some digging and then I found your brand and you have a whole team. And I'd love to kind of start there. Like, how did you become a wedding planner? Were you in a corporate world before? Or did you kind of step into this as, an earlier job of yours? How did this all start 9 years ago?
Yeah. So, it's kind of an, interesting story for me to tell anyways, because I think it's just probably not what people necessarily expect. I come from a management background. I was in management for 13 years and have always had like a fairly type A personality. I would say definitely more on the laid back version of type A, but still type A. And I absolutely, love making timelines and I love organizing things. And I love, honestly, I used to love like decorating my apartment and baking and things when I had time for that. And so I think I always had, creativity in me. And I obviously always had a sense of organization and management and planning. So it really kind of came to be, I knew that I was going to start a business at some point, and I think that's really, when it comes down to it, I really like starting businesses a lot. And I had already started a couple, and I was kind of making my way through what I was really passionate about and what was, I don't want to say going to stick, because I'm really passionate about what I do. You know what I mean? It's not like it just stuck. The first time I coordinated a wedding, I left and I said, I could do this the rest of my life. I mean, I'm absolutely obsessed with what I do, but I definitely started it initially because it kind of ticked all the boxes. I was like, I'm good at all these things. I already have all this experience in management. I've already been planning the events for the company I was working for at the time. And, I think I ended up actually accidentally coordinating one of our best friends' weddings. I look back on that now and I'm like, is that what I would call that, coordinating? But that's what I did. And I loved it so much. And I was like, great, I think this is what I want to hone in on and what I really want to focus on. And I spent a year just kind of diving into the nitty-gritty of how to market myself and how to, on, Facebook groups and like the things that you were still using 10 years ago. And I just kind of became drunk on it. I mean, I just loved the marketing side of it. I loved the business side of it. Within, 30 days, I had an LLC and a logo and my colors and a website done. Like I just went for it. And then it just snowballed. I mean, obviously I worked my butt off, and I had a full-time job at the same time that I was trying to establish this business and my brand and grow it into something worthwhile. And I probably did that for like a year and a half before I finally was able to go full time. And then, like I said, I've just worked really hard to turn it into something, um, that was going to pay all my bills and create a team and be able to go worldwide. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind. Honestly, I can't believe it's already been almost 10 years, but that's a very brief overview of how I'm here.
That is amazing. I feel like we share a similar passion. I also love starting businesses. And it's just fun to see. I think it's, I've had businesses that have started that didn't stick, and I've had businesses that have stuck, 13 years with my husband and, things like that. We have a whole corporate brand that's a whole separate thing. But it's kind of cool when you step into something and you know that it's going to stick because it feels so easy, and like you said, you did that first one and then you walked away and was like, I could do this for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just having actually a conversation, another interview recently, and I was trying to put into words why I felt like the first however many years of my business were really easy. And the person who was interviewing me said, well, what made it easy? And I was like, well, it wasn't easy. I mean, it was really, really hard. I think what it comes down to, though, is that I just loved doing it. I love starting new businesses. My brain just functions in a way where I think through things ABC, and it's again, probably a lot of my organization comes into that, but I just loved it so much. And I think even though it wasn't easy, even though I started out working 80-hour weeks and, not paying myself for a couple of years, it felt easy because I just enjoyed it so much.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Now, kind of going back to that, because we, some of our listeners here, some are full-time and some are headed for full-time, but they're just haven't quite taken that leap yet. And you said you came from a management background. How did you know when you were a year and a half into this new venture that it was time to take that leap? For someone who's listening to this and they're just wondering when it's the right time, what's your best advice for them?
Okay. I'm going to say something that I don't know if it's going to be helpful, but to be completely honest, I don't know. I mean, starting a business in general, starting any type of new venture is a risk, period. And I think a lot of the time people sort of get, what we're doing, we're working for ourselves and we're in this creative industry. And so it feels fun, or it sounds fun, or it looks fun. And so I think oftentimes it gets confused with something like a corporate job or a 9 to 5 or starting a brick and mortar, or it's somehow less serious and it's less of a risk and it's less scary, but it's not. You're still starting a business. That's huge. Just because you're not getting $1 million business loan from a bank doesn't mean it's not just as much of an investment with your time and your energy and potentially your money also. So I think no matter what, it might feel scary. I mean, when I stopped working my full-time job, first off, I mean, I did that for a year, working full-time and working almost full-time in weddings. So it's not like that was a clean transition of me being like, okay, now I'm ready to go full-time with weddings. I essentially was doing both. And then I got to a point, I think, where I had to logically look at what I was doing and say, if I wasn't doing this that I'm not passionate about, that I'm probably not even doing as well as I should be doing because I'm not passionate about it, if I took that off of my plate, how much more brain space would I have to give everything I have to this business that I am really passionate about? And so it was scary. And I don't necessarily think there was at one point that I was like, all right, it's time to do it. I think I just got to the point where I loved what I was doing in weddings so much that I knew I obviously couldn't keep going at the rate that I was going. And so it was going to be scary. And I had a savings account and I was going to have to take that leap at some point if I really wanted to go for it.
Yeah, such good advice though. I think being in a creative space, I think it is true. I think a lot of people don't think that it's as serious as it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it took our parents so long to figure out what we do and to actually like see it as a real business.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And still at Christmas, you know, you have the aunt that's like, "Oh, how's the photography going? Are you still doing that?" And you're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh,
100%.
they just like don't, it's like not a thing."
It's actually probably, I could see that even being harder for you. I mean, at least I have as a fallback, I have the movie The Wedding Planner that people will be like, "Oh, like Jennifer Lopez." And I'm like, totally just like that. But you probably even, you don't have necessarily something like that, not that I know of. So it's probably even harder for your friends or family to grasp what you do. It's the wedding industry is just a crazy place. And it's like any other industry. My brother's in the film industry, and when he talks about it, I'm always very respectful of the fact that like I don't know your industry at all. So I'm doing my best, but that's all I can do. And I don't think people realize the wedding industry or the events industry as a whole is very similar. It's like a whole other world that doesn't necessarily translate to other jobs or other industries. And if you're not in it, you really might not understand it at all.
Yeah. I will say the cool thing though about the industry that I've found as we have kind of taken our business from more of that, budget mainstream market to the lovely market into the luxury market is one thing that I think kind of remains the same is the luxury client. You can speak to the luxury client kind of no matter what creative realm that you're in. They all kind of speak the same language, I feel like. I don't know if you found that to be true. Like how they value things. And I'm sure this changes client to client. You have a client that values rentals so much more than maybe a client that values entertainment, right? But
right.
In general, they're all there to create a really great guest experience, right? And they want a really seamless process in the wedding planning thing. They're all busy professionals generally.
Yes.
That's why they bring on a wedding planner. That's kind of the biggest difference I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say, and that's something else, yes, to your point to keep in mind is that the luxury industry is also a completely different industry. That does, I mean, across anything, whether it's fashion or bridal or real estate or anything, like the luxury industry is a whole entity in and of itself. And then you're trying to bring in the wedding industry into the luxury industry. It's quite a mental shift to even understand that it's not just this place with more money. It's literally a lifestyle that you're catering to. It's like a completely different offshoot to the wedding industry, I would say.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so much of what you learn from what you've been told through fellow colleagues or something on how to run things when you're working with more of a budget client, it all kind of has to get flipped on its head when you start to seek that luxury client and work within the luxury space.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like nonstop too. And it's a huge learning experience, especially if you don't come from that. Doing the research and really understanding where you're trying to go and the type of people that you're trying to cater to. It's definitely, it takes time. It takes a lot of time, especially if you don't know anything about it and didn't come from it. It's quite a mind game.
It is a mind game. And I think my husband and I did not come from that at all, right? We learned along the way, like we just kind of like watched and very trial and error. Like we didn't know what it was like. Like we were very much came from families who like the ceremony's over and everyone's grabbing a chair and you're putting the chair in the reception space. Like that's, that was our reality. And that's when we went into the wedding industry, that's what we thought weddings were. We had no idea what weddings could be, or even the industry in itself has changed exponentially over 10 years. But it's really different, like you said, when you don't necessarily come from that. And I've kind of found along the way that you can kind of tell when you work with planners that kind of already came from that world, which isn't a bad thing. Like I think it's so admirable. It's just like it's so interesting to watch the way that they work through things and the way that they think. And it takes a lot for you to like change your mindset in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would definitely say, and that probably goes for any vendor. Honestly, I think you can definitely tell if someone was born into understanding that lifestyle or even, that price point. I mean, man, if you're born into that, you can even get to a price point of profit a lot faster because you understand, you look at money different even, you know what I mean? And then, you know, definitely the way you hold yourself probably is different. The way you interact with people is different. You can absolutely tell, in my opinion, a difference from someone who like came from a luxury lifestyle or at least understood it growing up and someone who didn't. And I don't think there's necessarily goods or bads. I mean, I'm sure there are goods or bads to everything, but yeah, it's pretty wild how distinctly different it is
Yeah.
when someone has been like raised with that and understands it. And even if they haven't been raised with it, if they just have a really good understanding of it, that's also really unique.
Well, Amanda, I'm so enjoying this conversation. And this brings us to our luxury insider tip of the day by Wedding Post House. Wedding Post House is an amazing culling service for filmmakers, whether you're on Adobe Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, or DaVinci. They have you covered. I have sent my films into Wedding Post House before, and they do all of your multicam syncing and your culling so that you still get to retain creative control of your edit. You just get all the best things laid out for you that are usable elements for your films. I would highly, highly recommend them. And we have a code for our listeners, Level Up 10 for 10% off of your next project with Wedding Post House. So, Amanda, what is your luxury insider tip for all of us today?
Oh man, my luxury insider tip is yeah, I'll say this one because it went over so well on my Instagram last week. But my luxury insider tip is to try not to ask the wedding planner when you'll be fed more than twice max. You get 2 times max. But after that, just hold out. Just be patient.
I mean, 2 times. That's pretty gracious of you.
Thank you. I think so too. I would definitely, honestly, I mean, look, if you're in the luxury industry, there's no way a planner is forgetting about your meal for sure. But I can see asking once. And if I mean, you got to eat, so I can see asking twice. But above that, it's just it's just not, just don't, you know?
I love it. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's also like once you're kind of leveling up, there's so much to shoot. Last Saturday, I didn't even eat. Like the planner was like, "There's food," and I'm like, "We have so many things to film. There's so many elements." There was like a 8-piece string something. I don't know what an 8-piece is. I'm like, a quartet. No, that's not right.
A double quartet.
Yeah, a double quartet. So there was so many things going on. And we
Yeah.
just grabbed Taco Bell on the way home, like we'd always do. Anyways.
You know, I think, yeah, the food situation's so interesting to me at weddings because I'm not condoning don't eat all day, but also it is what it is and it's your job. And I mean, you know how many days I don't eat at a wedding? In fact, sometimes I think I function better when I don't eat. So I understand I want everyone to get fed, but sometimes I'm like, just make it happen. You know what I mean? We're all in this together. I haven't eaten, you haven't eaten. Like at some point, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't make the caterer put out food. I can't go back there and grab the food. I've tried before. So sometimes, you just have to rally. It's part of what we do.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like stopping and doing that like 20 minutes of sitting down, it's hard to get back up. Like
hard.
I'd rather just like get a protein bar and eat it in the corner away from everybody.
1000%. The last wedding we did was in New York at the Bowery Hotel, and they had these breakfast sandwiches at the restaurant underneath, and I had one the day before, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get one on the wedding day. It's gonna be great. And I went over to take a quick bite of something that should be a pretty fast situation, and I took a bite of it, and I kid you not, yolk from the egg projectile shot everywhere, like all over the bar, all over my arm, all over everything. And I just looked around like, is anyone else seeing this? This is disgusting and humiliating. So yeah, I'm definitely going back to trying not to eat anything more than a couple protein bars, I think.
That's hilarious.
That's awful.
Okay, kind of shifting back to your business, because we all kind of start, I think, in a similar in a similar space. You start with your friends' weddings, and I feel like we did like a lot of our college friends' weddings because we started
Yes.
like right out of college. At what point in your business, now you're in your 9th season, you were telling me, when did you decide that the luxury market was where you wanted to head? When you started to see a difference between like this budget, this luxury market?
Mm-hmm. I think I was probably, honestly, I was probably at like year 5 or 6, when I actually started just I started working at a really high-end venue a lot. And they loved working with our team, and it sort of was just this really organic, natural partnership that sort of happened. And so I started working with these really high-end clients and realizing these were the type of jobs I wanted to do. This was the price tag I wanted to have. Um, and a lot of that for me, I mean, a lot, like I said before, a lot of why I want to be in the luxury industry is because of where I want it to take my life. I mean, it aligns with my goals. It aligns with my version of success and what I see for myself and my team and my business. And it honestly aligns with my like 10-20 year plan. So it's not just, and again, I think it's really hard because people so oftentimes think they want to get into the luxury industry because it'll be prettier or it'll be more fun or there'll be more, more things to photograph or more elements to plan or more money to do flowers. But it's just so much more than that. It's on a completely different scale. And with that, realistically, your profit margin should be higher because of, I mean, there is more money in them. And I think a big part of me wanting to get into the luxury market, on top of all these other reasons, like I really like a challenge and I like putting 1,000 man hours into the weddings we do. Like that really is how I thrive. But on top of that, I just saw a really realistic path for getting where I wanted to go. And so I was probably year 6 and started seeing more of them, started researching what the luxury industry even was, what it looked like for planners, what it looked like for other vendors. And then I just went for it and essentially completely rebranded. I've rebranded twice actually since then. And more every year, I learn more about the luxury industry and where I want to be and where I want to get to. And once you wrap your head around it, it's a pretty wild space. And honestly, it all kind of comes, it's all clear for me now. I see my path very clearly now that I fully understand the industry I'm trying to be in.
So yeah, back to that path, because we have so many people. We hosted a free 3-day workshop last month and it was called The Road to Luxury. So we were kind of like painting a picture of the road to luxury. You're getting in this car and you're setting on this trip and this is your destination, right? We did a lot of like play on words as far as like,
love it,
no taking detours and no, like this can distract you and things like that. And a lot of the questions we got were like, well, how do you look at a wedding planner's, feed and see that they're doing luxury events? Like other than like, because luxury doesn't always have to look like, bold and like huge arrangements or whatever. It can be very understated as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel like you
Yeah.
guys do like a lot of really pretty understated events.
Yes.
And like, how would someone know? Like, how
Yeah.
would you be looking at the rentals? Like, what kind of awareness should they kind of gain in order to see that vision?
Yeah, I think to your point, that can be very difficult because I mean, for me, my style of luxury is definitely going to be different than a lot of other planners' style of luxury, and mine is more based on experience, and obviously design as well. But that's hard too because certain clients hold priority on certain aspects of their wedding day, and so they might have spent $100,000 to get a huge band to play, and they might have spent almost no money on their design, or they might have gone all out and spent $500,000 on a hotel buyout, but then decided that they were just going to use that hotel's rentals for everything, and so no money was spent on design, and so that can be really hard to gauge, I think, on Instagram alone. I think what I have found, and I don't follow a lot of luxury planners, it's just part of me. But I do, yeah, it's part of my blinders strategy. But I think what you'll see from a lot of really high-end planners is well, one, you'll see more about the experience. So what I've found from some of the luxury planners that I do follow is you'll see grander spaces, or you'll see grander hotels, or you'll see, I mean, I follow one planner specifically who oftentimes I'm surprised by what she posts. I'm like, huh, that's an interesting choice. But as I'm scrolling through, I'm like, oh, you're showing the whole experience of the weekend, that you did a 5-day buyout at this really extravagant hotel in Italy. And that's what's really expensive, not this one tiny arrangement that you decided to post. So I think you have to follow them. Honestly, I think you kind of have to be really aware of what you're looking for. Look for a full experience that's being created, not just one detail here and there. And then on top of that, honestly, Instagram is probably not the place to even really understand if a planner is luxury or not, because some of the highest end planners, I mean, they're not even really relevant on Instagram. They don't even, it's not where they're getting their business. So they don't spend a lot of time curating it. Most of their business is through referrals. And then a lot of the clients they're getting, I mean, you probably know this, but a lot of the clients they're getting, they have NDAs with, so they're not even actually able to share a lot of that information.
Yeah.
So really, you kind of have to do a deep dive. You have to go to websites. You have to, I mean, even reach out to them. You have to see where people have been published. I mean, that's one of my, if a photographer or a videographer reaches out to me, one of the first things I look for is where they've been published, to be honest. Like, that kind of gives me a gauge on how long they've been in the industry, where they're at in the industry, and what kind of clients they work with.
That's a really good tip. Yeah. Going through and looking at all those things. Yeah. One of the things that I always say is like, don't always look at, the visual design of things, but also kind of look at who the creative partners are. You can see it a lot based on like who they have hired, based on who they've chosen for it. Maybe their style wasn't the most grand floral arrangement, but they invested in a florist who's super notable, that's been in the industry for a long time, that does really beautiful work.
For sure.
That can speak sometimes more to that than like this huge grandiose,
totally,
thing.
Yes, because that, I mean, like we've said, the whole luxury industry, it's not about necessarily being flashy. And that's what people think, is it's going to be this like celebrity wedding that's going to have stars falling from the sky and is going to, just be the most magnificent thing you've ever seen. And that's just not the point of the luxury lifestyle or luxury weddings at all. So it will be a little bit harder to, I think, suss out who is in that market. But yes, to your point, actually looking at the whole vendor team, because those are probably people they work with often. And it says, I think vendor teams say so much about who you are as a planner. I mean, as any vendor, but to me, I mean, that's a huge part of the reason that I work with very specific vendors and I work with them often. And that's because that team speaks volumes of me and my company as well. So yeah, actually, I think that's a great tip to give people, is to kind of look at that network that they're working with as well.
Yeah. So now kind of segueing into, because you already kind of brought us there as far as like who you work with, and you work with your team really regularly. How often would you say your clients are hiring a filmmaker? Because it's not always something that they're opting for.
No, I think, to be honest, I think most people want it. I just think unfortunately, it does fall by the wayside oftentimes, next to like my photography is the most important, my venue, my catering, my music, and then video is kind of this like, elective situation. And so I would say I'm probably, I mean, 80% of the clients I work with get video, and I definitely always push it. I always say that they should.
You are.
It's definitely part of like my group of vendors that I will refer whether or not they want them. But I mean, for instance, right now I'm working with a client who's getting married next summer, and she has a good budget, but realistically, like, video is just not in it. But I know that she'll want to splurge for it 100%. So I'm still going to like refer her my vendors for video. But yeah, I think it's still kind of, right now, I don't know if it'll always be this way, but it definitely is still one of those things that you don't know you need it until you know you need it. And the people who do know they need it, like, feel really strongly about it. Whereas other people are kind of like, eh. You know what I've actually found though a lot too, is a lot of people, and I don't know what's making people think this, but a lot of couples seem to feel like if they have video, it's going to be like a lot of people in their face the whole day. Like they feel like it's going to be this whole production. And a lot of the clients I work with want to have a more intimate feel to their day and like a little bit different. They don't want to feel like they're on the runway for the entire day. And so they feel like if they have a video team, it's going to be this big production and it's going to make them feel uncomfortable throughout the whole day. And I'm always like, no, the people I work with would never make you feel that way. But so I don't know if that's happening somewhere that I'm not aware of. I mean, I've worked with one video team before that was like a pretty intense production for sure, but that was like one time in the last 9 years. So I don't know if that's something that's big in the industry that you know of.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm a filmmaker, and I think that we really kind of shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit sometimes. And I always say, like, we're the new kids in school. Like, we're literally like one of the newest like vendors in the industry,
Yes,
right? Like our
totally.
parents had a photographer, our grandparents had a photographer. Like
Totally.
a lot of our parents didn't have a videographer. Our grandparents, basically all of them almost didn't have a videographer. Like we're just such a new thing. And I think sometimes we're still sort of finding our way in, because we come from like before weddings, right? Like film was like a huge production thing. Like
Right.
you think Hollywood, you think like you're on a movie set. And so I think that sometimes filmmakers can kind of fall into this thinking that it has to be this huge thing. You need this huge team, and you just really don't. And so I think we have heard that too, whether it be like on a client consultation, if they've wanted to talk to us before the wedding, and they've kind of said like, you know, they've kind of mentioned to us like, oh, you know, we were at our friend's wedding and like the video team was super distracting. And we're just like, we are really more big about like guest experience, honestly, than like having this like video keepsake in our minds. And like, I think people just need to respect where the client is at in their comfort level and journey. And I think that there's a video team for them. Like there's the highly director team. And then there's also like the more organic team that's just kind of there to read out and feel the client and just kind of capture things as they come. So I think, like for clients, I think for one, I think video teams need to like chill a little bit. And then they need to like, and then that's going to then snowball into more and more better experiences on either if someone's been a guest previously at a wedding and or in the bridal party or had their sister have someone. And then it's just going to start to like evolve into this thing that's very normal and in line with the rest of the creative team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting way to look at it, like the new kids in school, because it's really true. And there's probably a lot of responsibility on this generation's filmmakers, because you guys are kind of like setting the stage for years to come as far as normalizing having video for your wedding and normalizing what that team looks like and how it works with the creative team. Because I mean, I remember 5 years ago working with a videography duo, and it was such a nightmare.
Oh no.
But I feel like, but also that was newer at the time. You know what I mean? Like even juggling that and coordinating that between you guys and between a photographer, and it was new to figure out what that dynamic even looked like. And honestly, I mean, if I compare now to then working with the creative teams that I work with, it's much easier, and it obviously flows a lot better now than it did then. So it's just a really big learning experience that's really interesting. But I do like the idea of filmmakers needing to chill. But I mean, I love the ones I work with. They're all amazing. So
yeah, and you just kind of have to find them. And I think so for filmmakers, or maybe okay, when you started kind of curating your filmmaking team, the people that you love to work with and stuff, did you ever like ask your photographers who they like to work with, or how did that all start? How did you like really start to secure your team?
I think that No, it definitely didn't come from photo. If anything, photo gave me who they didn't like working with. And so I would curate based on whoever was hired first, just for ease of the day and my couple. But as far as when I started curating my team, I think that again, when I started, like, video was fairly new at the time. And so there was one person in my area who was doing these videos that I hadn't seen before, and they were incredible and amazing. And we quickly became friends. And then from then, I kind of like moved forward and forward. I feel like video and video style. I know photography styles change also, but I feel like video style is still changing too so much, and people are still finding their niche so much that it's actually really hard for me. I mean, I still look for new videographers all the time because I feel like people change their styles more or they are more. And I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a few that are very established in how they do it, but I don't know. I feel like maybe there's more artistic freedom a little bit with video than there is with photo. I feel like with photo, once you find your style, that's kind of what you stick with. And even if something's trendy, you don't really go over to that unless it's, a certain crop or something. But video styles, I feel like change faster. Maybe that's just what I've experienced, but I mean, even recently I had a client who wanted like a really romantic video, but I feel like the style of video right now is more like fun and edgy and swirly and I don't know. And
Yeah.
and it was really hard for me to find kind of like a romantic style. So I feel like even that changes really fast, and it's hard for me to like find one videographer who has like a niche style so that I know that I can go to them for that style every time.
So then would your recommendation be like for filmmakers to like stay in their lane so that you can like, I
I
don't know,
mean,
better find them?
I
Kind
would.
of.
I mean, for
Yeah.
me, yeah, it definitely, yeah, because I definitely have found a videographer and put them on my preferred vendors list because of a certain style that I knew they were really good at. And then in a year, they start doing a completely different style. And I'm like, well, okay. That's which is great. I totally understand like you're wanting to be creative and artistic, and I'm all for that for you for sure. But it's the same as working with a florist. If I find a florist because they have a garden style and then in a year they turn into this like really high fashion editorial different type of style, well now I'm going to use them for completely different types of jobs if I even work those types of jobs. So yeah, I mean, I think being in video, you have to find your niche just like everyone else does and your style and then kind of stick to it. And I think that's the hard thing probably about video is that it's like ever evolving and people are wanting to stay with the trends. How do you stay with the trends and also stay in your style? You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's such a new profession that even like juggling that and figuring out what you want to do, if you want to stay in the same style or if you want to follow the trends. I know that I'm kind of rambling, but I'm sort of just figuring this out as I'm talking through it. And it's probably very hard for you guys.
Well, I mean, it's like you could easily switch out the song and you have a completely different feel. It's just even
Totally.
down to that. You can cut
Totally.
faster and it
Yes.
has a different feel. Like you could
Yes.
utilize slow motion or not slow motion. Like it's not just
Yes.
as like it's not like photography where you sit down and you're like adding in that like
Yeah.
preset.
Preset.
Like
Yeah.
that's like, it's like
Yes.
there's so many different layers of it.
Yes.
Um and so yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. That I think it's really important. And this just like kind of just goes back to like establishing your brand, understanding who your ideal client is. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be your North Star and your guiding
Mm-hmm.
light
Yes.
in creating that consistency. Because I think the other thing that I always kind of say is that like luxury is consistency. So
Mm-hmm.
wherever you land as far as like what you want your film style to be, just keep
Yeah.
it consistent. And then that's going to point you in the direction of that client who is in a luxury client that's either,
Yes.
romantic or edgy or whatever they are.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, I think that 100% is true and accurate and goes across all wedding industry professions. I was just having a conversation with a florist yesterday about a shoot that was coming up. And I was like, I know that there's different trends coming out, and I know there's funkiness coming out, and everyone wants to be funky and everyone wants to be trendy and everyone wants to be on the edge and so on and so forth. And I'm like, but I really like my style and I love the clients who find me for my style, and I can do things within my style without needing to be weird or off the wall. I would rather just stick to what is really, really good and do it at the like absolute best and know who I'm attracting than just do things because they're trendy or funky, or I think, you know, they'll get a couple more likes on Instagram. It's just not worth it to me. I'd rather just stick to exactly who I know is seeing my work and loving my work, who I'm also loving in the process, you know, my ideal client.
And I think that's also just like the beauty of being in the industry for 9 years, for 13 years.
Yeah.
We have seen the trends come through and we've seen the trends leave. And it's like you start to, instead of like, you know, squirrel chasing all the trends, you kind of just stick on your path and know that like, this is what you're good at. This is the lane that I'm staying in so I can serve the clients, those clients as well as I can. And that's kind of what my best advice would be for someone who's listening that's maybe in year 2, 3, 4, you're not really quite sure where exactly you want to head, or you know, you kind of start to see like shiny lights of new things and new trends. It's like, you know, stick to what feels genuine to you. And I think that that's going to translate so much better than trying to just chase a quick trend to stay relevant. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm like using the air quotes on relevant there, but yeah. Okay. Also, I really like, before we hop off, I have to talk about May & Co Monthly. Like for those who are listening right now, what is May & Co Monthly? How is it founded? You are just like, again, going back to what I told you in the beginning, like you're just putting out so much great content, so much great education. Everyone should be following you over there. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always had a really big, you know, along with management and everything, I've always definitely had, I guess, like the leadership trait, and I've always loved education and really thrived while educating and helping others thrive in whatever they're doing. That's like been a huge passion of mine since day one. I mean, my second year in business, I was already starting workshops, which is just crazy when I think back on it. I'm like, what was I teaching? What was I doing? But now I started May & Co Monthly almost 3 years ago now. And it's May & Co Monthly started as my monthly membership for wedding professionals, to its courses and resources and coaching. And I mean, it's a whole host of things that you get every single month. And it's honestly incredible in my opinion. And then since starting the membership, I've kind of grown it into more of just this like platform and community that I'm loving more and more. And it's grown into a lot more coaching, and it's grown into a lot more, I think I just want to be able to say the things that people need to say or want to say, and maybe can't find the voice to say, or you know, don't even feel like they have the right to say. I just, like I said at the very beginning, I think that there's a really clean way of being able to say what needs to be said and make people aware and educate the whole community, including clients, on what the wedding industry is like. There's a really clean way of being able to do that and also be respectful and kind and have everyone's back. And it's not always, you know, it doesn't always make everyone happy. The things that are said, I've definitely had some people who are not happy about the things, but it's not, you know, and if that's the case, like it's not for everyone. I have a very, I wouldn't say, I maybe blunt. Some people call it blunt. I have a very, forward way of talking about things. I just don't have time to bullshit around things. You know what I mean? No one has time for that. We're all busy. So it's been, I mean, honestly, it just keeps growing and growing, and it's a lot of fun. So if anyone's not on May & Co Monthly, yeah, highly suggest getting over there and joining the chat, because it's a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, you're literally saying like all the things that need to be said, like genuinely. I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a photographer, and we have like very transparent chats about literally everything that you say online is like what we say, that we're like, people need to talk about this. And then we're like, Amanda's talking about it. Like I was like, you need to follow this girl. And he loves following along too. So
So great.
Anyways, so for those listening that want to go see, your planning business and your team, where can they find you? And then where can they find you on more of your education sector? So over on May & Co Monthly.
Yeah. So my Instagram handle is mayandco_creative, www.mayandcocreative.com. And my education is mayandcomonthly.com or at May & Co Monthly. It's all very simplified and very consistent. And also, if you just go find May & Co Creative, there's plenty of links to also take you over to my education and my resources through those links. So it's pretty easy to find, but
awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know that everyone else will find it so valuable. And I hope that you have a great rest of your 9th season.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us reach more filmmakers just like you by taking a screenshot and sharing it on social media. Don't forget to tag us at The Level Up Co.
And join us again next week, same time, same place, as we continue to level up the industry together.